Welcome. On this special evening, I will be delighted to be your guide as we join the methodical Phileas Fogg and his loyal servant, Jean Passepartout, on their extraordinary journey around the world. A daring feat that was virtually unthinkable. For its time, we will embark together on sleepy train journeys, cross oceans aboard mighty steamships that ply sparkling seas, and even venture on the back of elephants through the exotic landscapes of India. This retelling of Jules Verne's classic novel, Around the World in 80 Days, is not just a narrative. It is an invitation to travel through time, exploring breathtaking landscapes and ancient cities, all designed to gently ease you into a deep, peaceful, and utterly relaxing night's sleep. Before we begin our literary adventure, however, let us take a precious moment to relax, find inner peace and absolute comfort right here, in this moment and in the place where we find ourselves. Gently close your eyes and allow your body, like a feather, to sink into the mattress that supports you. In this refuge, there are no obligations, no to-do lists to complete. Now you have permission to close your eyes and simply be, to exist fully. Feel the comfort of the soft mattress beneath you. Feel how it gently cradles your body, inviting you to completely and totally release any tension that may be accumulated. Notice the pillow beneath your head, offering a soft landing so that your thoughts can quiet down and your emotions can fall asleep in a space of undisturbed calm and profound serenity. For a moment, let your imagination wander slowly without rushing. At first, you may not be sure where you are, but you will feel a deep calm, a well-being that envelops you, and the air around you will convey an even greater sense of security and welcome. Breathe in deeply and exhale slowly, letting the fragrant breeze be your subtle guide to your surroundings. Air smells fresh and clean, like freshly laundered cotton clothes hanging out to dry on a sunny clothesline. It's almost as if you can smell the sun itself in the air. But there's also an earthy scent, the characteristic smell of damp soil and humus that lies in the cool shade, out of direct sunlight. You can smell the crisp, citrusy scent of the towering trees that tower overhead. And you can smell the ferns that spread across the forest floor, dancing and swaying gently in the gentle wind that sweeps through the woods. The sun caresses your face, its golden rays peeking through the dense canopy of trees to reach you. Even with your eyes closed, you can almost feel the rhythmic movement of the trees above, swaying incessantly from left to right and right to left, each individual leaf twisting and turning at its own whim. Occasionally, you feel their shadows sweep gently across your face. The breeze brushes your arms, keeping the temperature perfectly pleasant and refreshing, even with the sun's rays that manage to penetrate the foliage. And that's not the only thing that keeps you feeling refreshed. Now that you can feel the breeze on your skin, the sun on your face, and inhale the stunning scents of the forest air, you realize that you're not standing still. You are floating slowly along. You notice the sounds of the water all around you, the murmur of a crystal clear stream, winding its way through the depths of a forest untouched by human hands. And as this river gently carries you along, you notice something truly miraculous happening. Your hands glide through the water, refreshing your body and intensifying the feeling of purity. And while this happens, the sun's rays seem to reach specific parts of your body, while others remain hidden by the shadows of the leaves. First, the sunlight gently hits your head. The warmth of its rays softens your facial expression, prompting you not to squint, but to let your eyelids relax. Slightly, you feel your tongue relax and the muscles around your mouth loosen, giving you more breathing room and releasing any tension you might be holding there. Your teeth gently part and your jaw drops into a more natural, relaxed position. Then the sun's rays reach your torso. You feel their warmth penetrate your skin, melting away any pressure or weight you've been carrying there. When you inhale now, there's more space in your lungs. Your breath becomes deeper, slower, more nourishing. Your heart relaxes, no longer constrained by any pressure or stress that would have urged it to beat faster. It settles into a leisurely rhythm, calming you even more. Then you feel the sunlight on your arms and legs. It reminds you that there are no battles to be fought tonight, no reason for your body to remain rigid. Your hands relax and rest in a natural position on the mattress, and your legs do the same. With this newfound comfort and relaxation, they seem to sink deeper and deeper into the mattress beneath you. Every particle of your being, from the tips of your toes to the top of your head, is calm and deeply relaxed. If at any point you feel any tension or pressure returning, know that you can return to this exercise. You can always let the sunlight warm your skin and comfort you until you fall asleep. Now that we have taken a moment to relax and find comfort in where we are, here and now, let's begin our story. Around the World in 80 Days, Mr. Phileas Fogg was a peculiar and enigmatic figure in London society. A wealthy gentleman of about 40 years of age, he stood apart from most of his class. He had no wife or children, and he certainly did not spend his time at the lavish parties or luxurious events that so often rocked London's drawing rooms. Even in the company of others, he was a solitary and reserved man, zealous about keeping his private and personal life strictly to himself. Few, if any, truly understood the complexities of Phileas Fogg, his meticulous habits, his hidden hopes, his innermost dreams, or his singular worldviews. On the rare occasions when he did speak, to people, he would often talk about the world-telling stories of distant lands and places of breathtaking beauty. And yet everyone was quite certain that he himself had never traveled. Despite having vast resources to do so every day, Phileas Fogg would head to the Reform Club, a gentleman's social club for the wealthy and elite of London society. Would spend most of his day there, enjoying a sumptuous breakfast and chatting with the other members until late in the afternoon. And although he spent the entire day at the club, the men who shared his time with him never left knowing anything more about the mysterious figure of Phileas. One particularly bright day, Phileas Fogg was sitting in the Reform Club, enjoying his wonderful breakfast of fried eggs, sausages, and beans on crispy toast. He leafed absently through a newspaper as he did so, sipping his black coffee and listening to the other gentlemen in the club, chattering animatedly among themselves. This day he joined in the conversation, feeling hopeful and awake as the sun shone brightly through the tall windows, casting golden rays across the club floor. Ralph, another member, considerably more talkative, leaned closer, eager to share with everyone the news of a daring robbery. Apparently someone had robbed the Bank of England the night before, making off with a staggering £55,000 sterling. But the most amazing thing about it was that the man was not part of a band of thieves, nor did he appear to be a common criminal. He was a gentleman, impeccably dressed, and clearly well-to-do. "I wonder how far the thief got," one of the club members commented, stirring his aromatic Earl Grey tea with a distinctive clink of his silver spoon. Another member smiled and interjected, "The world is a vast place. He could have gone anywhere." Mr. Fogg folded his newspaper and put it aside with a slight smile on his face, clearly intrigued by the conversation. He added, with his usual precision, "The world has become considerably smaller of late." He went on to discuss the recent completion of a new railway across the Indian continent, a railway that, according to the Daily Telegraph, would allow people to travel around the world with relative ease in just 80 days. The other men in the club rolled their eyes and laughed scornfully. They insisted that there was no way a man could circumnavigate the globe in 80 days. Of course, the 80-day estimate did not take into account bad weather, shipwrecks, or any other accidents that were sure to occur on a journey of such mammoth proportions. But Mr. Fogg disagreed, shaking his head and assuring the men that such incidents had already been included in the 80-day estimate. One of the club members, Mr. Stewart, laughed at Mr. Fogg and rolled his eyes as he said defiantly, "I'd like to see you try, Mr. Fogg." The other men laughed, but Mr. Fogg did not hesitate. Before telling Stewart that he would love to do it, and that he had no doubt that he could do it, in a suit, he would be willing to bet £20,000 that he could circumnavigate the globe in 80 days. The men in the club fell silent, shocked by such a bold statement. Confidently, Andrew Stewart held out his hand, agreeing to the wager. Mr. Fogg shook his hand and left the club immediately, eager to set off on the journey without further ado. Phileas Fogg returned to his impressive residence in central London. There, his French valet, Jean Passepartout, was waiting for him. Jean was a cheerful, talkative, and proud man, the very antithesis of his employer. Unlike Mr. Fogg, he rarely took things too seriously and was often found joking around with others in the neighborhood. He was not one to keep secrets or hide anything about his personality or life, which made him a rather curious choice to be the servant of a man as protective of his privacy and as silent as Mr. Fogg. When Fogg instructed Passepartout to pack for the journey, the valet was quite perplexed and even astonished. He did not truly believe that it would be possible to circumnavigate the world in 80 days, but the very idea of the adventure excited him immensely. He could almost smell the fresh tea and spices of India. He could already feel the chilly breeze coming from the snow-capped mountains of Japan. He could feel the sun of the American Southwest kissing his skin. Passepartout set to work, packing small suitcases known as carpet bags. They planned to buy clothes along the way, things that would surely become vivid mementos of this incredible adventure for the rest of their lives. That same night, they set sail from England, beginning their epic journey around the world. In London, news of his departure spread through the cobblestone streets like wildfire. People made their own bets on whether the journey was possible or not. The excitement surrounding such a grand adventure was palpable and sent sparks of inspiration throughout the city. But just as Fogg and Passepartout set out on their journey, the London Police Commissioner received a rather strange telegram. A telegram accusing Mr. Fogg of being the mastermind behind the Bank of England robbery. At first, such an accusation seemed impossible, but as the police commissioner thought about it, more and more pieces of the puzzle began to fall into place. Mr. Fogg had fled England in a rather hasty manner. He was a solitary man full of secrets. He was a man who showed no interest in and took no pleasure in gambling. But now he was traveling around the world for one. The police commissioner suspected that Mr. Fogg had set out on this journey simply to elude the detectives, but he knew from that moment that he would not allow that under any circumstances. He was determined to catch Mr. Fogg, no matter where he was traveling. After catching an 8:45 p.m. night train to Dover, Passepartout, and Fogg's journey truly began. Fogg began keeping a rigorous and accurate record of the places and times of their travels, allowing him to keep track of time even as they crossed several time zones. When they landed in France, they boarded a train to take them through the picturesque countryside and down into Italy. Boarding the elegant mahogany train, Passepartout was amazed even before it began to move. Fogg had spared no expense in his accommodations for this journey, and the train was one of the finest that Passepartout had ever seen in his life. He settled back into the plush seat and watched, wide-eyed in wonder, as the world glided past him like a moving painting. France had been his home for most of his life, but it had never felt like this before. The train cut through vast countryside parts of the country few people had ever been privileged to see. He felt as if he were living inside a work of art, watching magnificent landscapes fly by. They passed through the lush landscapes of northern France, through forests where the sunlight shimmered around them like scattered diamonds, and through trees where birds flew from tree to tree overhead, soaking up the splendid day as they sang their songs to the universe. Of course, Passepartout and Fogg could not hear their melodies clearly, but they loved watching their feathers gleam golden in the piercing sunlight as they took flight. Then they crossed into the mountains and hills of central and eastern France. The train meandered lazily through the lush, expansive lavender fields. These covered vast expanses with a dazzling light purple mist, a mist that shimmered and danced in the wind. Passepartout opened the window and breathed deeply, absorbing the relaxing scent of lavender that emanated from the flowers. He knew there was a long journey ahead of him, a journey that would certainly be stressful at times. And yet Passepartout felt completely at ease, filled with an unexpected calm. He felt as if the excitement and beauty of the trip far outweighed the stress and threat of losing the bet. No matter what happened, this trip was destined to be the best of his life. As the train entered Italy, Passepartout looked out of the windows at the mighty Alps with tears welling in his eyes. It was one of the most spectacular sights he had ever seen. The mountains were so grand that they seemed to scrape the clouds in the sky. Some of the mountain peaks even disappeared behind them. Shrouded in mystery, Mr. Fogg, with his imperturbable calm, sipped his exquisite tea from a fine, delicate china cup while watching the world speed by outside the window. He meticulously examined the worn world map and plotted their route, determined to make this journey happen on schedule without a minute's delay. When they finally reached southeastern Italy and the Adriatic coast, they disembarked from the train. At the port city of Brindisi, the smell of the sea was salty, bracing, and incredibly inviting. Passepartout was excited to see the open sea after so long without seeing it, and Fogg reminded him with a condescending smile, that they would see many seas together. Of that there was no doubt. The two of them boarded a steamer known as the Mongolia ship, where they were provided with the most luxurious accommodations money could buy. When their steamship docked at the Egyptian port city of Suez, Passepartout was the first to disembark. The dry desert air was a shock to his system at first. There was not a drop of moisture, and the air itself smelled of fresh fruits, of date palms, of aromatic spices and seasonings that he had never encountered before in his wanderings. He hurried to the British consul's office, determined to get a visa stamped in Mr. Fogg's passport to prove that they had indeed made their way around the world. Little did he know that the other man present in the consul's office was none other than Mr. Fix, a detective sent to catch the man who had stolen the money from the Bank of England. After a long conversation with Passepartout, Detective Fix became even more convinced that Mr. Fogg was indeed the person they suspected of having stolen the money from the Bank of England. Determined to capture him, he asked the consul to send a letter to London to obtain a warrant for Mr. Fogg's arrest, so that Detective Fix could arrest him as soon as they arrived in Bombay. And it seemed that Mr. Fogg and Passepartout would arrive in Mumbai much sooner than expected. Wanting to make sure he could win the bet, Fogg offered the ship's engineer a large sum of money to ensure they arrived early. However, after the calm waters of the Red Sea, the Indian Ocean had other plans. One morning, Fogg awoke to find the ship rocking much more than usual. What was usually a gentle, comforting rocking had become something much more extreme, a rocking and swaying so intense that Mr. Fogg found himself clinging to the bed frame, trying to stay steady on his soft bed. He stood up and looked out the window, looking out at a very unforgiving sea. White caps covered the tops of the gigantic waves that seemed to reach the dark, gray, black sky. Storm clouds stretched to the distant horizon, crackling and lighting up the turbulent seas with white-hot lightning every few moments. Mr. Fogg could hear the rumble of thunder just beyond the splashing of the waves and the creaking of the ship. The wind whipped against the sides of the vessel, but Mr. Fogg was not in the least concerned. Even in the face of such a storm, he displayed an air of absolute calm. Passepartout ran to his side, expecting to have to calm or help his master, but Mr. Fogg was calm. He encouraged Passepartout to relax and enjoy the journey ahead. He continued as he had in the first days on the ship. He ate 4, rather, exotic meals a day and watched the storm through the window. To pass the time, he played fun card games with the other passengers, always making sure to let the other person win at least once. Passepartout often participated in these card games, but occasionally he found himself chatting with the detective Fix, whom he was delighted to meet on the boat. Passepartout was unaware of Fix's true intentions, so he saw him only as a traveling companion, a man capable of engaging and stimulating conversation. Despite the fierce storm, the Mongolia reached Bombay 2 full days ahead of schedule. Mr. Fogg was pleased with this, but he was even more pleased when he stepped out into the streets of Bombay and saw them in all their glory. And excitement. The first thing he noticed was the vibrant colors that emanated from every street and building. Streets that led to vast, bustling markets, people dressed in every color of the rainbow, cooking food so delicious that it made one's mouth water in mere seconds. Passepartout was perhaps even more amazed than Mr. Fogg. They were to take a train from Bombay across India to Calcutta, which gave Passepartout more than enough time to appreciate the wonders of Bombay. Passepartout set off alone, excited to discover what unseen beauties Bombay had to offer. He walked the dirt streets, admiring the soft red sand beneath his feet. He wandered through bustling markets, buying exquisite fabrics and alluring spices, and admiring the art that the locals had produced with such care and dedication. But there was one thing that caught his attention above all others. On a hilltop in the distance stood a temple, a brightly colored Hindu temple that seemed to shine in the sun like a beacon, drawing his gaze. Mesmerized by it, Passepartout climbed up to the temple to truly admire it in all its architectural and spiritual beauty. He pulled aside a vibrant yellow cloth and found himself inside the temple, filled with intricate carvings and designs that told ancient stories. But as he gazed at the temple, it became clear that some people were not happy with his presence there. The group of Hindus in the temple began shouting at Passepartout. A man tore off his shoes and scolded him in a harsh tone. Unsure of what was enraging them, Passepartout ran out of the temple, leaving behind his torn sandals and a bag full of things he had bought at the market. People chased him, still shouting, and ordering him to come back. Passepartout ran as if his life depended on it. When he reached the train, he bent down beside Mr. Fogg, gasping for breath and frightened. He explained what had happened to Mr. Fogg, who, with his usual phlegm, advised Passepartout to stay out of trouble. Unaware that tourists were generally forbidden from Hindu temples, or that certain areas were restricted, he had not only entered one, but had also disobeyed a sacred law by wearing his shoes on consecrated ground. But next door, someone else heard Passepartout's account, and this gave him exactly what he needed. Detective Fix realized that Passepartout had not only been unknowingly disrespectful, but had also broken British law in colonial India, as the warrant for Mr. Fogg's arrest had not reached Bombay in time. Detective Fix had been looking for an excuse to arrest Fogg, and in Passepartout's confession, he had found it. On board the train, the Indian landscape began to unfold before his awed eyes. Passepartout gazed out of the window in utter awe as they wound through the forests and jungles of India. The views were so lush and breathtaking that they almost brought tears to his eyes. For the first time, he understood exactly why Mr. Fogg had done what he had done, and he believed in his mission with renewed fervor. But the mission was not easy, and they were reminded of this when the train came to an abrupt halt. They learned that the railroad tracks were not, in fact, fully laid for a 50-mile stretch that they would have to cross on their own before reboarding the next section of the railroad. Passepartout was frightened by this, but Mr. Fogg assured him that they would make it in time, his confidence unshakable as ever in a local village. The two managed to find a man with an elephant. After paying the man a considerable sum, they managed to convince him to take them across the long stretch of road to the next train station on the back of his elephant. As they rode through the countryside on the back of the pachyderm, they began to develop a deeper connection with this beautiful and mysterious land. Sleeping under the stars and observing the different peoples along the way filled Passepartout's soul and spirit with an indescribable richness. But one thing caught them by surprise. One day, they came across a young woman named Aouda being forced to participate in a barbaric ceremony that would lead to her death. Desperate to save her, and knowing that they were still 12 hours ahead of schedule, Mr. Fogg and Passepartout decided to rescue her. Passepartout executed a clever diversion, scaring the other participants in the ceremony and giving Mr. Fogg enough time to rescue Aouda from the clutches of imminent death. Having nowhere to go until they could find a relative in Hong Kong, Aouda joined them as they continued on their way to the next section of the railway. Mr. Fogg was delighted to discover that Aouda was brilliant and charming, a woman of regal bearing with a vast knowledge of history and the world. They chatted animatedly as they continued their journey, growing ever closer to each other. Eventually, they reached the other section of the railway and continued on their journey. But just before they were about to board the steamer in Calcutta, which would take them to Hong Kong, they were stopped by the local police. They were both handcuffed and told that they were being arrested for violating a sacred religious site. Passepartout's entry into the pagoda would result in a 15-day prison sentence, which was extended to Mr. Fogg as well, ensuring that they would not reach England within the 80-day deadline. Detective Fix was elated that his alternative plan had worked, but was devastated to learn that Mr. Fogg had quickly escaped his prison sentence by bribing the guards. When they arrived in the bustling and beautiful city of Hong Kong, they discovered that Aouda's distant relative had moved to the vibrant tulip fields of Holland. Not wanting to leave her alone in Hong Kong, Mr. Fogg invited her to accompany them, eager to have her along for the journey. And what a journey they had ahead of them. After Detective Fix failed in yet another attempt to arrest Mr. Fogg in Hong Kong, the last British territory on their way before reaching foreign nations, the group of four, Fogg, Passepartout, Aouda, and unknown to them, Fix, boarded a steamship bound for San Francisco. Knowing that he would not have another chance to arrest them on British soil for some time, Detective Fix joined them for the rest of the journey so that he could arrest them as soon as they reached British soil again. The long crossing of the Pacific Ocean was peaceful. Mr. Fogg and Aouda spent much of their time sipping tea and gazing out at the star-studded horizon, taking in the beauty of the vast ocean before them. They passed the time in relative peace, even as the 80-day deadline loomed ever closer. Finally, they arrived in San Francisco. The beautiful port city was bustling with music and people from all over the world. A very modern city for its time. It was brimming with new ideas and an exciting creative energy. Although they would have liked to stay longer, they boarded the transcontinental train that would take them to New York. There were several serene days aboard the train as well. They gazed out the window at the rapidly changing landscape. The impossibly high mountains of the West Coast, the Sierra Nevada and the Rockies, that seemed to rise up and brush their snow-capped peaks against the azure sky. There were the prairies, glowing in the golden light of the setting sun, and humming with the sound of grasshoppers and cicadas as they made their way through the wilds. There were winding rivers and bubbling streams, which calmed their hearts even with the end of the journey on the horizon. And there were bison, an immense and incredible herd of bison that crossed the tracks. The train stopped for a long time to let them pass, something that made both Passepartout and Fogg look at their watches with concern in their eyes. But that wasn't the only problem they had as they crossed the country. A collapsed suspension bridge forced them to find an alternate route. After boarding a wind-powered sled to take them the rest of the way to Omaha, the group managed to catch another train to New York City. The view from the window was mostly trees and river valleys, but Alyuda soaked in every moment. It was so lush, so beautiful, so different from the equally beautiful landscape of her home country. When the party finally arrived in New York, they discovered that their ship had already sailed. Desperate to reach Britain in time, Mr. Fogg found a steamer called the Henrietta, which was bound for Bordeaux, France. Mr. Fogg tried to convince the captain to stop in Liverpool, but to no avail. However, Fogg, Passepartout, and Alyuda agreed to board the ship for Bordeaux. With another plan in mind, not once aboard the ship, Mr. Fogg talked to the crew, convincing them to mutiny and sail the ship to Liverpool. The mutiny was a resounding success, but the last leg of their journey was anything but smooth. Battling hurricane winds and rain, the ship ran out of fuel within days. At first, the situation looked bleak, but Mr. Fogg managed to see a light, and in it, find a solution. The crew burned all the wood and furniture on board the ship, giving them enough fuel to reach Ireland. After catching a train to Dublin and a ferry to Liverpool, the three realized that they would indeed make it back to London in time. Unfortunately, the minute they stepped foot on English soil, Detective Fix was waiting for them with a warrant for Mr. Fogg's arrest. Mr. Fogg was devastated, fearing that his chance to win the bet was lost forever. Soon after his arrest, however, the truth was revealed. The real Bank of England robber, a man named James Strand, was arrested. Mr. Fogg was released from prison and rushed to London by train as fast as he could. To his great disappointment, he discovered that he had arrived in the city 5 minutes late. The next day, Mr. Fogg visited Alyuda. He apologized profusely to the beautiful and intelligent woman. Since he had lost the bet, he had no funds to support her. Alyuda looked into his eyes, taking his hands in hers. She confessed her love for him, the words rolling off her tongue as sweet and warm as honey. She did not care if he was poor. She wanted to marry him. Even though he knew he would live in poverty, Mr. Fogg agreed. Passepartout went to a clergyman to inform him of the marriage, finding a ray of light in all that darkness. But when he talked to him, he discovered that the date was not December 22nd, as they thought, but December 21st. As they traveled east, their days were shortened by 4 minutes for each degree of longitude they crossed. They were actually a day ahead of London. Overjoyed by this discovery, Mr. Fogg hurried to the Reform Club and arrived just in time to win his bet. He proudly received his winnings and told everyone about the wonderful journey he had been on, knowing that he could not have done it without. The rest of his party, he gave half the money to Passepartout and married Alyuda. He lived the rest of his days in harmony and often spoke of the incredible places they had traveled during their adventurous journey around the world in 80 days. Hope you enjoyed this bedtime story and that it gave you a peaceful, deep, and restful night's sleep. Please join me again tomorrow night for another bedtime story. Until then, have a good night's sleep.